Hello and welcome to Beyond Shakespeare. In today's exploring session, we'll be beginning our first look at the Duchess of Malfi by John Webster, a play which is more famous than most of the plays that we read for the first time, or indeed the second, but which I personally haven't read. So, imbibe my ignorance as we approach this play as if we knew nothing about it. I do know this. It dates from 1613. It was written by John Webster. Did I say that before? Anyway, I'm quite nervous. Today, helping us with this fabulous text, we have some fabulous readers. Reading Silvio and the Old Lady.
It's me, Helen, in Suffolk.
Reading Bosola.
Lois in London.
Reading Delio, the Duchess and Second Servant.
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm in the Northwestern United States.
Reading the Cardinal and Castruccio.
I'm Brian Myers from Portland, Oregon.
We have a slight confusion because I'm not quite sure who's turned up as to who's reading Ferdinand and First Servant, Antonio and Julia.
I'm just stepping in till the actual people who are meant to be reading that step in. But yeah.
Okay. And that's all four of them, Eric?
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Okay. And reading Grisolan, Cariola, Roderigo, stage directions, and guest hosting today for our regular host, Robert Crighton, is me, Aliki, and I'm in Athens in Greece. Now, I'm told that this is quite a long play, so unless anyone has any questions, we'll just get on with it. Cool. So here we go. Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Antonio and Delio.
You are welcome to your country, dear Antonio. You have been long in France, and you return a very formal Frenchman in your habit. How do you like the French court?
I admire it in seeking to reduce both state and people to a fixed order. Their judicious king begins at home, quits first his royal palace of flattering sycophants of dissolute and infamous persons, which he sweetly terms his master's masterpiece, the work of heaven, considering duly that a prince's court is like a common fountain whence should flow pure silver drops in general, but if it chance some cursed example poisons near the head, death and diseases through the whole land spread. And what is it makes this blessed government but a most provident council who dare freely inform him the corruption of the times? Though some of the court hold it presumption to instruct princes what they ought to do, it is a noble duty to inform them what they ought to foresee.
Enter Bosola.
Oh, here comes Bosola, the only court goal. Yet I observe his railings not for simple love of piety. Indeed, he rails at those things which he wants, would be as lecherous, covetous, or proud, bloody, or envious as any man. If he had means to be so, here's the Cardinal.
Enter Cardinal.
I do haunt you still.
So?
I've done you better service than to be slighted thus. Miserable age, where only the reward of doing well is the doing of it.
You enforce your merit too much.
I fell into the galleys in your service, where for 2 years together I wore 2 towels instead of a shirt, with a knot on the shoulder after the fashion of a Roman mantle. Slighted thus. I will thrive some way. Blackbirds fatten best in hard weather. Why not I in these dog days?
Would you could become honest.
With all your divinity, do but direct me the way to it. I have known many travel far for it, and yet return as errant knaves as they went forth, because they carried themselves always about with them.
Exit Cardinal.
Are you gone? Some fellows, they say, are possessed with the devil, but this great fellow were able to possess the greatest devil, and make him worse.
He hath denied thee some suit?
He and his brother are like plum trees that grow crooked over standing pools. They are rich and o'erladen with fruit, but none but crows, pies, and caterpillars feed on them. Could I be one of their flattering panders, I would hang on their ears like a horse leech till I were full, and then drop off. I pray leave me. Who would rely upon these miserable dependencies in expectation to be advanced tomorrow? What creature ever fed worse than hoping Tantalus? Nor ever died any man more fearfully than he that hoped for a pardon. There are rewards for hawks and dogs when they have done us service, but for a soldier that hazards his limbs in a battle, nothing but a kind of geometry is his last supportation.
Geometry?
Aye, to hang in a fair pair of slings, take his latter swing in the world upon an honorable pair of crutches, from hospital to hospital. Fare you well, sir, and yet do not you scorn us, for places in the court are but like beds in the hospital, where this man's head lies at that man's foot, and so lower and lower.
Exit Bosola.
I knew this fellow 7 years in the galleys for a notorious murder, and 'twas thought the Cardinal suborned it. He was released by the French general, Gaston de Foix, when he recovered Naples.
'Tis great pity he should be thus neglected. I have heard he is very valiant. This foul melancholy will poison all his goodness. For I'll tell you, if too immoderate sleep be truly said to be an inward rust unto the soul, then if then doth follow want of action, breeds all black malcontents, and their close rearing, like moths in cloth, do hurt for want of wearing.
Okay, so that was a little scene in which we met 4 people. 2 of them really don't like each other very much. Do we have anything to say about it? I know we're in a court. I know there's a cardinal. It's not a very long scene. I don't feel like terribly much happened.
Certainly is set with a moral background.
Yeah, Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like the speech that Antonio has at the beginning about the French court and what court should what governments should be. That's foreshadowing. That's setting the tone. That's because we're going to meet another character in the next scene who is
Please don't tell us what's going to happen
Okay.
next, because I really don't know.
But it's like, why are we talking about this? You'll see.
Okay.
I also just want to say right here that Bosola is one of my favorite characters in
Mine
all
too,
of
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'll try and figure out why. Alan.
Cynical. I mean, you can see that he's bitter. And you can't really say from what we know of him that he's a good person. He was condemned to the galleys for murder.
Mm-hmm.
But on the Cardinal's orders, yeah.
So he's
so we know what that animosity is about, at least.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a man of no particular means and depends on rich people and does bad things for but you can tell he's really chafing at that already. So I mean, I just think already he's really an interesting character.
Yeah. Sorry, Alan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it uses an awful lot of words for not an awful lot of purpose, and it almost feels like an extended throat clearing. The actors basically, have I got a stage voice today?
Oh, I had a director who used to say that you should always start out the first lines of something quite slow so that people get used to your voice. Maybe that's what Webster's doing, letting people get used to his world and his voice. Shall we move on to scene 2?
Yeah.
Act 1, scene 2. To Antonio and Delio enter Silvio, Castruccio, Julia, Roderigo, and Grisolan. Okay.
This always happens worst time. The present skins to fill. You promised to make me the partaker of the natures of some of your great courtiers.
Lord Cardinals and other strangers that are now to court. I shall. Oh, here comes the great Calabrian Duke.
Enter Ferdinand in attendance.
Who took the ring oftenest?
Antonio Bologna, my lord.
Our sister Duchess, great master of her household. Give him the jewel. When shall we have this sportive action? When shall we leave this sportive action and fall to action indeed?
Methinks, my lord, you should not desire to go to war in person.
Now for some gravity. Why, my lord?
It is fitting a soldier arise to be a prince, but not necessary a prince descend to be a captain.
No?
No, my lord. He were far better do it by deputy.
Why should he not sleep why should he not as well sleep or eat by a deputy? This might take idle, offensive, and base office from him, whereas the other deprives him of honor.
Believe my experience, that realm is never long in quiet, where the ruler is a soldier.
Thou toldest me thy wife could not endure fighting.
True, my lord.
And of a jest she broke off a captain she met full of wounds. I have forgotten.
She told him, my lord, he was a pitiful fellow, to lie, like the children of Ismael, all intents.
Why, there's a wit able to undo all the chirurgeons of the city. For although gallants should quarrel and had drawn their weapons and were ready to go to it, yet her persuasions would make them put up.
That she would, my lord. How do you like my Spanish jennet?
He is all fire.
I am of Pliny's opinion. I think he was begot by the wind. He runs as if he were ballast with quicksilver.
True, my lord. He reels from the tilt often.
That's me laughing as two people, by the way.
Why do you laugh? Methinks you that our courtiers should be my touchwood. Take fire when I give fire. That is, laugh when I laugh, were the subject never so witty.
True, my lord. I myself have heard a very good jest, and have scorned to seem to have so silly a wit as to understand it.
But I can laugh at your fool, my lord.
He cannot speak, you know, but he makes faces. My lady cannot abide him.
No?
Nor endure to be in merry company, for she says too much laughing and too much company fills her too full of the wrinkle.
I would then have a mathematical instrument made for her face, that she might not laugh out of compass. I shall shortly visit you at Milan, Lord Silvio.
Your grace shall arrive most welcome.
You are a good horseman, Antonio. You have excellent riders in France. What do you think of good horsemanship? Nobly, my lord, as out of the Grecian horse issued many famous princes, so out of brave horsemanship arise the first sparks of growing resolution that raise the mind to noble action. You have bespoke it worthily.
Your brother, the Lord Cardinal, and sister Duchess.
Enter Cardinal with Duchess and Cariola, because that's what we needed right now. More characters on stage.
Yeah.
Are the galleys come about?
They are, my lord.
Here's the Lord Silvio is come to take his leave.
Now, sir, your promise. What's that cardinal? I mean his temper. They say he's a brave fellow. Will play his 5,000 crowns at tennis, dance, court ladies, and one that hath fought single combats.
Some such flashes superficially hang on him for form, but observe his inward character. He is a melancholy churchman. The spring in his face is nothing but the engendering of toads. Where he is jealous of any man, he lays worse plots for them than ever was imposed on Hercules, for he strews in his way flatterers, panders, intelligencers, atheists, and 1,000 such political monsters. He should have been pope. But instead of coming to it by the primitive decency of the church, he did bestow bribes so largely and so impudently, as if he would have carried it away without heaven's knowledge. Some good he hath done.
You have given too much of him. What's his brother?
The Duke there, a most perverse and turbulent nature. What appears in him mirth is merely outside. If he laughed heartily, it is to laugh all honesty out of fashion.
Twins?
In quality. He speaks with others' tongues and hears men's suits with others' ears, will seem to sleep on the bench only to entrap offenders in their answers, dooms men to death by information, rewards by hearsay.
Then the law to him is like a foul black cobweb to a spider. He makes it his dwelling and a prison to entangle those shall feed him.
Most true, he never pays debts unless they be shrewd turns, and those he will confess that he doth owe. Lost for his brother there, the Cardinal, that they that do flatter him most say oracles hang at his lips, and verily I believe them, for the devil speaks in them. But for their sister, the right noble Duchess, you never fixed your eye on three fair medals cast in one figure, of so different temper. For her discourse is so full of rapture, you will only begin then to be sorry when she doth end her speech, and wish in wonder she held it less vainglory to talk much than your penance to hear her. Whilst she speaks, she throws upon a man so sweet a look that it were able to raise one to Galliard, that lay dead in a palsy, and to dote on that sweet countenance. But in that look there speaketh so divine a countenance that as cuts off all lascivious and vain hope. Her days are practiced in such noble virtue that sure her nights, nay more her very sleeps, are more in heaven than other ladies' shrifts. Let all sweet ladies break their flattering glasses and dress themselves in her.
Fie, Antonio, you play the wire drawer with her commendations.
I'll case the picture up. Only thus much. All her particular worth grows to this sum. She stains the time past, lights the time to come.
You must attend, my lady, in the gallery some half an hour hence.
I shall.
Exeunt Antonio and Delio.
Sister, I have a suit to you.
To me, sir.
A gentleman here, Daniel de Bosola, one that was in the galleys.
Yes, I know him.
A worthy fellow he is. Pray let me entreat for the proprietorship of your horse.
Your knowledge of him commends him and prefers him.
Call him hither.
Exit attendant.
We are now upon parting, good Lord Silvio. Do us commend to all our noble friends of the Leaguer.
Ah, I shall.
You are from Milan?
I am.
Bring the Carouches. We'll bring you down to the haven.
Exeunt Duchess, Silvio, Castruccio, Roderigo, Grisolan, Cariola, Julia, and attendants.
Be sure you entertain that Bosola for your intelligence. I would not be seen in it, and therefore many times I have slighted him when he did court our furtherance, as this morning.
Antonio, the great master of your household, has been far fitter.
You are deceived in him. His nature is too honest for such business. He comes, I'll leave you.
Exit Cardinal, enter Bosola.
I was lured to you.
My brother here, the Cardinal, could never abide you.
Never, since he was in my debt.
Maybe some oblique character in your face made him suspect you.
Doth he study physiognomy? There's no more credit to be given to the face than to a sick man's urine, which some call the physician's whore, because she cousins him. He did suspect me wrongfully.
For that, you must give great men leave to take their times. Distrust doth cause us seldom be deceived. You oft see the shaking of the cedar tree fastens it more at root.
Yet take heed, for to suspect a friend unworthily instructs him the next way to suspect you, and prompts him to deceive you.
There's gold.
So, what follows? Never rain such showers as these without thunderbolts in the tail of them. Whose throat must I cut?
Your inclination to shed blood rides post before my occasion to use you. I give you that to live the court here and observe the Duchess, to note all the particulars of her behavior, what suitors do solicit her for marriage, and whom she best affects. She's a young widow. I would not have her marry again.
No, sir?
Do not you ask the reason, but be satisfied I say I would not.
It seems you would create me one of your familiars.
Familiar? What's that?
A very quaint invisible devil in flesh. an intelligencer.
Such a kind of thriving thing I would wish thee, and ere long thou mayst arrive at a higher place by it.
Take your devils, which hell calls angels. These cursed gifts would make you a corrupter, me an impudent traitor. And should I take these, they'd take me to hell.
Sir, I'll take nothing from you that I have given. There is a place that I procured for you this morning, the provisorship of the horse. Have you heard on it?
No,
'Tis yours. Is it not worth thanks?
I would have you curse yourself now, that your bounty, which makes men truly noble, e'er should make me a villain. Oh, that to avoid ingratitude for the good deed you have done me, I must do all the ill man can invent. Thus the devil candies all sins o'er, and what heaven terms vile, that names he complimental.
Be yourself. Keep your old garb of melancholy. 'Twill express you envy that those that stand above your reach, yet strive not to come near 'em. This will gain access to private lodgings where yourself may, like a politic dormouse.
As I've seen some feed in a lord's dish, half asleep, not seeming to listen to any talk, and yet these rogues have cut his throat in a dream. What's my place? The provisorship of the horse. Say then, my corruption grew out of horse dung. I am your creature.
Away!
Exit Ferdinand.
Let good men for good deeds covet good fame, since place and riches oft are bribes of shame. Sometimes the devil doth preach.
Exit Bosola. Okay, so some plot has started happening here. And we found out quite a few more things. We're in a court that seems to have nobility from several places, and they want to go to war, but they're doing some tournament jousting instead. And we have a duke, that's Ferdinand, the cardinal is his brother, and they have a sister who is a young widow, and they have just hired, or Ferdinand has just hired, Bosola to keep an eye on her, or to spy on her. Okay, cool. I hope that was kind of clear to everybody. Slightly confusing, I know, because Eric was playing two people who were talking to each other. Well handled, Eric. So any thoughts on this rather longer scene? Lynn?
Yeah, again, Bosola is such an ambiguous character. Like, he's like, oh, you got a job for me? Who should I kill? Whose throat should I cut? And then he says, well, I got you a job. I want you to spy on my sister. He's like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
so it's like murder, that's fine, but spying, I'd rather not. Okay, but I'm broke and I need the job. Yeah, this is just such a great part. I think as you know, I mean, not that I would ever get the opportunity to actually do this on stage, but this is just so rich for an actor. He's so conflicted. I think you could just really bring a lot of layers to that performance.
Mm-hmm. Lois, did you have something to say?
Well, I was my feeling was that line, whose throat must I cut, is taunting Ferdinand. I mean, it's just saying, of course, that's the only thing you would be giving me gold for. He's not necessarily saying I'm eager to do it.
And that was certainly how you read it. So that was how I took it too.
Oh, good.
Me too.
Anything else? All of these, horses and discussions about.
Yeah. Again, we have the Antonio's speech in the beginning about the French court and how kings, how heads of state should behave. A little philosophizing in this as well, where one point of view is a head of state should be the head of the army, but he shouldn't be out there tramping around the mud and risking his life. And then Ferdinand's like, what good is the king if he can't fight? So these two sort of conflicting points of view about what it means to be a head of state. I suppose if you were eager to shorten up your running time, a lot of that could go, but I just think it's really enriching for the text, because it's the text is, the play's thinking about a lot more things than just sort of the domestic situation of two brothers and a sister.
Mm-hmm. Alan.
Must admit, I think I'm having an issue with this because of the way we're doing it. I think on stage it would probably be a lot clearer, because I think so far, I mean, in 10 pages, I think we met about a dozen characters, and trying to keep in your head who the places is who, and the relationships, which have in some cases been quite well explained, but getting them in the mind without costume or positional signifiers is quite tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Or it is for me.
Yeah.
It may just be I'm slow today.
I was thinking about that because as somebody who's reading the stage directions, I reeled off this huge list of names of people who were there, and then we basically had 2 dialogues. So yeah, I mean, with the bodies on the stage, it would be very different. Lois, was that a resting hand or a
Yes.
raised?
Yeah, I think you can see that this is quite a bit later than a lot of the plays that we've been reading, in that there's a lot in it that doesn't seem to be doing anything directly for the plot. People are not just saying the bare minimum that they need to say to get something across. And there is an attempt, I think, at establishing a certain kind of atmosphere, which means, a certain amount of almost meaningless chit chat. I mean, stuff that you could easily cut. And in fact, most productions do cut it, and they cut out quite a lot of these characters. But there's obviously the sense of a court, a lot of people around Ferdinand. And I think there have got to be, because that line of his, "Why do you laugh?" Several people have been laughing. And you can really play that to be quite scary. Everything is all very pleasant and mild. And then suddenly he more or less tells them they should only laugh when he laughs. And there could be a real change of tone there. But you need to have enough people to kind of establish the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that sense, and I don't know. I mean, we haven't looked at the rest of the play. I wouldn't leap to cutting this, because it's quite good dialogue and interesting, even if you don't understand what's going on or who all these people are. Okay, shall we move on? Eric.
I was just going to say that aside from the fact that, okay, some words I'm I really don't understand, is like the details of what is going on and stuff. Just sort of the descriptions are quite nice. Antonio gets very, very sort of elaborate with those metaphors when he talks about the Duchess and stuff. And sort of yeah, I don't know. I think that's why it's hard to differentiate, because you can't tell that he's suppose he's meant to be the steward of her house, rather than, so basically a servant, but sort of secondary to I don't know, second in command, so to speak. I don't know how you would sort of phrase it, but it's interesting because he doesn't have that sort of a different way of speaking. So it's kind of, you'd expect the sort of more stereotypical way of being handled in plays of this period, where you've got a differentiation in the way people speak, so you can tell their status sort of in a play. But he doesn't have that. He's very sort of poetic all over the place. And then you get Ferdinand, who sort of talks about Daniel de Bosola as being a worthy fellow, and sort of as soon as he says it, she doesn't even dare to challenge him. She just goes, "Yes, of course. Please don't kill me." I mean, it depends how you read it, obviously, but your knowledge of him commends him and prefers him. It's well, sure, whatever. Right? Yeah, you're the king. I mean, you're the boss, right?
Yeah. And then we've had a great deal of talk about the Duchess, but she has said very little up until now. But it looks like she's about to come back in. So shall we see what happens next? Act 1, Scene 3. Enter Ferdinand, Duchess, Cardinal, and Cariola.
We are to part from you, and your own discretion must now be your director.
You are a widow. You already know what man is, and therefore let not youth, high promotion, eloquence,
No, nor anything without the addition honor sway your high blood.
Marry, they are most luxurious will wed twice.
Oh, fie.
Their livers are more spotted than Laban's sheep.
Diamonds are of most value, they say, that have passed through most jewelers' hands.
Whores by that rule are precious.
Will you hear me? I'll never marry.
So most widows say, but commonly that motion lasts no longer than the turning of an hourglass. The funeral sermon and it both end together.
Now hear me. You live in a rank pasture here, in the court. There is a kind of honeydew that's deadly. 'Twill poison your fame, look to it, be not cunning, for they whose faces do belie their hearts are witches ere they arrive at 20 years. Aye, and give the devil suck.
This is terrible, good counsel.
Hypocrisy is woven of a fine small thread, subtler than Vulcan's engine. Yet believe it, your darkest actions, nay, your privatest thoughts will come to light.
You may flatter yourself, take your own choice. Privately be married under the eaves of night.
Think it the best voyage that e'er you made, like the irregular crab, which though it goes backwards, think that it goes right because it goes its own way. But observe, such weddings may be more properly said to be executed than celebrated.
The marriage night is the entrance into some prison.
And those joys, those lustful pleasures are like heavy sleeps which do forerun man's mischief.
Very well. Wisdom begins at the end. Remember it.
Exit Cardinal.
I think this speech between you both was studied. It came so roundly off.
You are my sister. This was my father's poignard, do you see? I'd be loath to see it look rusty, because 'twas his. I would have you give o'er these chargeable revels. A visor and a mosque are whispering rooms that were never built for goodness. Fare ye well, and women like variety of courtship. What cannot a neat knave with a smooth tale make a woman believe? Farewell, lusty widow.
Exit Ferdinand.
Shall this move me? If all my royal kindred lay in my way unto this marriage, I'd make them my low footsteps. And even now, even in this hate, as men in some great battles, by apprehending danger, have achieved almost impossible actions, I have heard soldiers say so, so I, through frights and threatenings, will essay this dangerous venture. Let old wives report I winked and chose a husband. Cariola, to thy known secrecy I have given up more than my life, my fame.
Both shall be safe, for I'll conceal this secret from the world as warily as those that trade in poison keep poison from their children.
My protestation is ingenious and hearty, I believe it. Is Antonio come?
He attends you.
Dear good soul, leave me, but place thyself behind the arras, where thou mayst overhear us. Wish me good speed, for I am going into a wilderness where I shall find nor path nor friendly clue to be my guide.
Cariola goes behind the arras. Enter Antonio.
I sent for you. Sit down, take pen and ink and write. Are you ready?
Yes.
What did I say?
That I should write somewhat.
Oh, I remember. After these triumphs and this large expense, it's fit, like 50 husbands, we inquire what's laid up for tomorrow.
So please your beauteous excellence.
Beauty is, indeed, I thank you. I look young for your sake. You have taken my cares upon you.
I'll fetch your grace the particulars of your revenue and expense.
Oh, you are an upright treasurer, but you mistook. For when I said I meant to make inquiry what's laid up for tomorrow, I did mean what's laid up yonder for me.
Where?
In heaven. I'm making my will, as 'tis fit, princes should, in perfect memory. And I pray, sir, tell me, were it not better I make it smiling thus, than in deep groans and terrible ghastly looks, as if the gift we parted with procured that violent distraction?
Oh, much better.
If I had a husband now, this care were quit. But I intend to make you overseer. What good deed shall we remember? Say.
Begin with that first good deed began in the world after man's creation, the sacrament of marriage. I'd have you first provide for a good husband, give him all.
All?
Yes, your excellent self.
In a winding sheet.
In a couple.
Since when afraid that were a strange will.
For a stranger, if there were no will in you to marry again.
What do you think of marriage?
I take it as those that deny purgatory. It locally contains or heaven or hell. There's no third place in it.
How do you affect it?
My banishment feeding my melancholy would often reason thus.
Pray, let's hear it.
Say a man never marry, nor have children. What takes that from him? Only the bare name of being a father, or the weak delight to see the little London ride a cock-a-horse upon a painted stick, or hear him chatter like a taught starling.
Fie, what's all this? One of your eyes is bloodshot. Use my ring to it. They say 'tis very sovereign. 'Twas my wedding ring, and I did vow never to part with it, but to my second husband.
You have parted with it now.
Oh, yes, to help your eyesight.
You've made me stark blind.
How?
There is a saucy and ambitious devil dancing in this circle.
Remove him.
How?
There needs small conjuration, when your finger may do it. Thus. Is it fit?
She puts the ring upon his finger. He kneels.
What said you?
Sir, this goodly roof of yours is too low built. I cannot stand upright in it, nor discourse without I raise it higher. Raise yourself, or if you please, my hand to help you. So?
Raises him.
Ambition, madam, is a great man's madness that is not kept in chains and close-pent rooms, but in fair lightsome lodgings, and is girt with the wild noise of prattling visitants, which makes it lunatic beyond all cure. Conceive not I am so stupid, but I am whereto your favours tend. But he's a fool that, being a cold, would thrust his hands at the fire to warm them.
So, now the ground's broke, you may discover what a wealthy mine I make you lord of.
Oh, my unworthiness.
You were ill to sell yourself. This darkening of your worth is not like that which tradesmen use in the city. Their false lights are to rid bad wares off. I must tell you, if you will know where breathes a complete man, I speak it without flattery, turn your eyes and progress through yourself.
Were there nor heaven nor hell, I should be honest. I've long served virtue and entertained weights of her.
Now she pays it. The misery of us that are born great, we are forced to woo because none dare woo us. And as a tyrant doubles upon his words and fearfully equivocates, so we are forced to express our violent passions in riddles and dreams, and leave the path of simple virtue, which was never made to seem a thing it is not. Go brag, you have left me heartless. Mine is in your bosom. I hope we'll multiply love there. You do tremble. Make not your heart so dead a piece of flesh to fear more than to love me. Sir, be confident. What is it distracts you? This is flesh and blood, sir. 'Tis not a figure cut in alabaster. Kneels at my husband's tomb. Awake, awake, man. I do here put off all vain ceremony, and only do appear to you a young widow that claims you for her husband, and like a widow, I use but half a blush in it.
Truth speak for me, I will remain the constant sanctuary of your good name.
I thank you, gentle love, and cause you shall not come to me in debt, being now my steward, here upon your lips I sign the quietus est. This you should have begged now. I have seen children oft eat sweetmeats thus, as fearful to devour them too soon.
But for your brothers?
Do not think of them. All discord without this circumference is only to be pitied and not feared. Yet should they know it, time will easily scatter the tempest.
These words should be mine, and all the parts that you have spoke, if some part of it would not have savored flattery.
Kneel.
Cariola comes from behind the arras.
Be not amazed, this woman's of my counsel. I have heard lawyers say a contract in a chamber, per verbe de presente, is absolute marriage.
She and Antonio kneel.
Bless heaven, this sacred Gordian which let violence never untwine.
And may our sweet affections, like the spheres, be still in motion,
Quickening and make like soft music.
that we may imitate the loving palms, best emblem of a peaceful marriage that never bore fruit divided.
What can the church force more?
That fortune may not know an accident either of joy or sorrow to divide our fixed wishes.
How can the church build faster? We are now man and wife, and 'tis the church that must but echo this. Maid, stand apart. I now am blind.
What's your conceit in this?
I would have you lead your fortune by the hand unto your marriage bed. You speak in me this, for now we are one. I will only lie and talk together and plot to appease my humorous kindred. And, if you please, like an old tale in Alexander and Lodowick, lay a naked sword between us, keep us chaste. And let me shroud my blushes in your bosom, since 'tis the treasury of all my secrets.
Exeunt Duchess and Antonio. Whether the spirit of greatness or of woman reign most in her, I know not, but it shows a fearful madness. I owe her much of pity. Exit Cariola. Okay, so at the top of the scene, we have a double act of brothers telling her she shouldn't marry and she should be careful and discreet and not do anything that could get her reputation into trouble. And she says, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm never going to marry again. And as soon as they're gone, she goes, hey, steward, have my ring. You're cute. Let's go to bed. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio, so far at least, seems to be everything that she says he is. All we've heard from him is how wonderful she is and how he is not worthy. And okay. And so that's done. She considers that a marriage because they exchanged rings and knelt in front of Cariola for her blessing, right?
Yeah.
As a witness, yeah.
As a witness, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can see that this might be exciting and lead us strange places. So any thoughts on the scene?
Oh,
Brian, then Lynn.
just
And
a
Eric
tiny
would
point.
be-
Just
Oh.
a tiny point. This will be quick. I really like the line that compares where she compares their new formed marriage to a Gordian knot. Famous only because it's a challenge how to cut it.
Yeah. How to undo. Yeah. How to
Yeah,
undo.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I like the whole wordplay with the ring too. And
Yes. Oh, that was
Yeah.
cute. Yeah.
that was really lovely. Sorry, Lynn.
Yeah. I don't know how familiar the original audience would have been with the source text, but this is actually based on a true story. She was a duchess, a duke's sister, but she was also a duchess because she married
Another Duke.
a duke in a neighboring
Mhm.
principality. Was widowed had one son, was widowed quite young. She was like 19 when her husband died. So she is young, and presumably desirable in other ways. And even some of the audience would have been familiar with that story, knowing that she was young, that she had an heir, and so her brothers think it's perfectly safe to tell her not to marry again. And if historically our evidence about remarriage is kind of conflicted. A lot of people wrote against it. Women who remarry, they're just doing that for lust, and that's never good. But most people who were widowed did remarry at all levels of society. So it would have been really unusual for a young aristocratic widow never to have married again, because there were, in any case, political alliances that could be reinforced by her marrying again. So it's kind of weird that her brothers are so adamant she should never marry again, because she's, you know, a woman of her status is at her age is really quite a valuable bargaining chip in the world of politics. So it's a little weird.
They seem to be concerned that she might be bringing on gossip, or in this apparently particularly plotty and perfidious court, I guess.
Yeah. And they don't say don't marry without our permission. They say don't get married. So yeah.
Eric, did you have something to add? Yes.
Well, I mean, we've seen this trope in other places, like the insatiate countess, all that stuff, where like a woman is expected to be lustful, a lustful widow, and all that stuff. And sort of, I don't think we've seen male widowers before in these places. Maybe I missed one or two, but like sort of, it seems to be mainly female, like women who have married and lost their husband. And then seems to be, that's the trope.
Sure, because
like,
that's a woman who is both sexually experienced and virtuous in this structure.
Yeah.
That a lot
and
of
also powerful, I guess, in that she knows what she wants in some ways.
Lois?
I don't know. Yeah, Lois.
Sorry, Eric. I thought you were done. Sorry. Lois?
Well, I think it is presented as a puzzle. I mean, when Ferdinand first tells Bosola, I would not have her marry again, you know, Bosola saying, no, sir, obviously, why on earth? And Ferdinand says, don't ask the reason. And then you get this weird scene between, you know, Ferdinand and the Cardinal, which is one of several places where the speech, I mean, it requires really a kind of rehearsal. As she says, you know, I could have sworn you'd rehearsed this thing, because each one picks up from the other as if they'd memorized it or something. And, you know, why are they so concerned about it? So I think it is here as a, not just as a sort of, this is a historical situation, but also just as, why are they doing this? What is the reason for this obsession? And then, yes, I was going to say something about Ferdinand's last speech. I was astonished, but when Ferdinand is telling the Duchess, you know, don't get married. Let me just find that bit. It's
page 10, maybe?
Yeah, it's the you are my sister, this is my father's poniard, and so on. He says, a visor and a mask are whispering brooms that were never built for goodness. Fare you well. Then the original text goes on, and women like that part, which, like the lamprey, has ne'er a bone in it. She says, fie, sir, knowing exactly what he means. And he says, nay, I mean the tongue, variety of courtship. And so it's a particularly filthy bit. And I'm astonished. I mean, I don't know if there are any other cuts in this text, but we seem to have a 19th century one that has removed this.
Wow.
I'm astonished. That's a really delightful bit to lose, and I'm very glad we have you to tell us.
Yeah, I know this play very well. Yes, I mean, yes, but I mean that is a, you know, and it's the fact that Ferdinand talks like that to his sister says something about him.
Yes, Alan.
I have a feeling, Guy, because I did some initial work on this text a while ago, and I have a feeling that it was another one of the 19th century editions done by a clergyman. And they were rather slapdash with bowdlerization.
So
yeah, a lot of the best lines ended up on the floor.
So presumably we'll have lots of other rude bits cut. Oh dear.
Good. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to rely on Lois's knowledge of the text to remind us of them when we hit them.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got a Duchess of Malfi. Yeah, well, right. I can have a paper copy. I can bring that.
Yeah, well, I've got loads of copies of it, but I think I can actually remember most of them. This is a play. I don't know. I fell in love with it when I was an undergraduate. I made a little theater and dragged people in to watch me act out bits of it with little paper cutouts, and so it's always fascinated me. And there's so much to be said about it. The trouble is that it really is a much more carefully worked text than most of the ones we read. I mean, one thing, I don't know if you picked up on it, but the the kind of literalization of metaphor, like when Antonio kneels to the Duchess and she says, this roof is too low built, I can't stand up in it. And then she says, raise yourself. And then, if you please, my hand to help you. I mean, both raising yourself, rise sort of socially, and then give you my hand. I mean, all these things it's just so complicated. A lot of this text, you could write notes on many lines in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brian, then Eric.
Yeah, I too have the impression that the brothers are telling her not to marry at all, but there was one line that goes in a slightly different direction I wanted to ask help with. The Cardinal says, Ferdinand says, you are a widow, you know already what man is, therefore let not youth, high promotion, eloquence, and the Cardinal interrupts and says, no, nor anything without the addition honor sway your blood, which seems to be hinting at least that if there were an honorable suitor, maybe that would be okay. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think
Sorry.
Yeah, I think you watch what the Cardinal says later, because I think he is more obsessed with their rank. I think it suggested Ferdinand may not be just about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I too thought they were slightly at odds on the matter.
Mm.
Eric, did you have something to say? And then Alan?
Yeah, I was just going to mention one of my favorite speeches in all this play. In this play, the now she pays it, the misery of us that are born great. That's a great speech, because it's sort of like she's so worried about making the first move, not just because of obviously not just because of what her brother said, but also like sort of generally. But it's just such a good speech. We are forced to woo because none dare woo us, and like sort of, I don't know, it's just a really, really well penned speech as well, as Lois pointed out.
Yeah, well, it's a scene that, I mean, it could just be ludicrous. And she says, I'm a young widow that claims you for her husband, I'm behaving like a widow. But in fact, it's just so delicate, the way that she gradually leads him, to this thing about the ring and his notion, and the fact that he's terrified initially. I mean, because he sees it as a circle. There's a lot of stuff about circles and rings, and you kind of watch it through the play. And the idea there's a devil dancing in the circle, because sometimes you can imprison a devil by drawing a circle around it, I think, and it can't get out. Anyway, and this feeling, and then his talk about ambition. And there's an awful lot about ambition and rising, and trying to become great men. Webster was actually a London citizen. I mean, people used to have all sorts of fantasies about what sort of weird, ghoulish character he was. He was, in fact, a perfectly respectable citizen of London in a guild. But I think he did regard court and aristocrats with a kind of horror, and that world of great men is treated very cynically.
Yeah.
Alan, you had something to say?
Yeah, well, my thought on the discussion between the two brothers as to, oh no, you mustn't remarry. The subtext there to me was, until we find someone who we can benefit through. It's basically, there's a marriage market out there and we're going to get the best deal we can get.
Okay, let's find out what happens next then, unless anyone has anything to add. Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Bosola and Castruccio.
You say you would fain be taken for an eminent courtier.
'Tis the very main of my ambition.
Let me see. You have a reasonable good face for it already, and your nightcap expresses your ears sufficient largely. I would have you learn to twirl the strings of your band with good grace, and in a set speech at the end of every sentence, to hum 3 or 4 times, or blow your nose till it's smart again to recover your memory. When you come to be a president in criminal causes, if you smile upon a prisoner, hang him. But if you frown upon him and threaten him, let him be sure to escape the gallows.
I would be a very merry president.
Do not sup o' nights. It will beget you an admirable wit.
Rather it would make me have a good stomach to quarrel, for they say your roaring boys eat meat seldom, and that makes them so valiant. But how shall I know whether the people take me for an eminent fellow?
I will teach a trick to know it. Give out you lie a-dying, and if you hear the common people curse you, be sure you are taken for one of the prime nightcaps.
Enter an old lady.
Ah, you come from painting now.
From what?
Why, from your scurvy face physic. To behold thee not painted inclines somewhat near a miracle. Those in thy face here were deep ruts and foul sloughs, the last progress. There was a lady in France that, having had the smallpox, flayed the skin off her face to make it more level. And whereas before she looked like a nutmeg grater, after she resembled an abortive hedgehog.
You call this painting?
Oh, no, but you call it a careening of an old morphewed lady to make her disembogue again. There's rough cast phrase to your plastic.
Seems you're well acquainted with my closet.
One would suspect it for a shop of witchcraft, to find in it the fat of serpents, spawn of snakes, Jews' spittle and their young children's ordure, and all these for the face. I would sooner eat a dead pigeon taken from the soles of the feet of one sick of the plague than kiss one of you fasting. Ah, here are two of you whose sin of your youth is the very patrimony of the physician, makes him renew his footcloth with the spring and change his high-priced courtesan with the fall of the leaf. I do wonder you do not loathe yourselves. Observe my meditation now. What thing is in this outward form of man to be beloved? We account it ominous if nature do produce a colt or lamb, a fawn or goat, in any limb resembling a man, and fly from it as a prodigy. Man stands amazed to see his deformity in any other creature but himself. But in our own flesh, though we bear diseases which have their true names only ta'en from beasts, as the most ulcerous wolf and swinish measle, though we are eaten up of lice and worms, and though continually we bear about us a rotten and dead body, we delight to hide it in rich tissue. All our fear, nay, all our terror, is lest our physician should put us into the ground to be made sweet. Your wife's gone to Rome. You two couple, and get you to the wells at Lucca to recover your aches. I have other work on foot.
Exeunt Castruccio and old lady.
I observe our Duchess is sick-a-days. She pukes, her stomach seethes, the fins of her eyelids look most teeming blue. She wanes in the cheek and waxes fat in the flank, and contrary to our Italian fashion, wears a loose-bodied gown. There's somewhat in't. I have a trick, may chance discover it, a pretty one. I have bought some apricocks, the first our spring yields.
Enter Antonio and Delio talking together apart.
And so long since married? You amaze me.
Let me seal your lips forever, for did I think that anything but the air could carry these words from you, I should wish you had no breath at all. Now, sir, in your contemplation, you are studying to become a great wise fellow.
Oh, sir, the opinion of wisdom is a foul tetter that runs all over a man's body. If simplicity direct us to have no evil, it directs us to a happy being, for the subtlest folly proceeds from the subtlest wisdom. Let me be simply honest.
I do understand your inside.
Oh, do you so?
Because you would not seem to appear to the world puffed up with your preferment, you continue this out-of-fashion melancholy. Leave it, leave it.
Oh, give me leave to be honest in any phrase, in any compliment whatsoever. Shall I confess myself to you? I look no higher than I can reach. They are the gods that must ride on winged horses. A lawyer's mule of a slow pace will both suit my disposition and business, for, mark me, when a man's mind rides faster than his horse can gallop, they quickly both tire.
You would look up to heaven, but I think the devil that rules in the air stands in your light.
Oh, sir, you are lord of the ascendant, chief man with the Duchess. A duke was your cousin german removed. Say you were lineally descended from King Pepin, or he himself. What of this? Search the heads of the greatest rivers in the world. You shall find them but bubbles of water. Some would think the souls of princes were brought forth by some more weighty cause than those of meaner persons. They are deceived. There's the same hand to them. The like passions sway them. The same reason that makes a vicar go to law for a tithe pig and undo his neighbors makes them spoil a whole province and batter down goodly cities with the cannon.
Enter Duchess and ladies.
Your arm, Antonio. Do I grow fat? I'm exceeding short-winded. Bosola, I would have you, sir, provide me a litter, such a one as the Duchess of Florence rode in.
The Duchess used one when she was great with child.
I think she did. Come hither, mend my ruff. Here, when? Thou art such a tedious lady, and thy breath smells of lemon pills. Would thou hadst done. Shall I swoon under thy fingers? I'm so troubled with the mother.
I fear too much.
I have heard you say that the French courtiers wear their hats on for the king.
I have seen it.
In the presence?
Yes.
Why should not we bring up that fashion? 'Tis ceremony more than duty that consists in the removing of a piece of felt. Be you the example to the rest of the court. Put on your hat first.
You must pardon me. I've seen in colder countries than in France, nobles stand bare to the prince, and the distinction, methought, showed reverently.
I have a present for your grace.
For me, sir?
Apricocks, madam.
Oh, sir, where are they? I've heard of none to year.
Good, her color rises.
Oh, indeed, I thank you. They are wondrous fair ones. What an unskillful fellow is our gardener. We shall have none this month.
Will not your grace pare them?
No, they taste of musk, methinks. Indeed they do.
I know not, but I wish your grace had pared them.
Why?
I forgot to tell you, the knave gardener, only to raise his profit by them the sooner, did ripen them in horse dung.
You jest. Oh, you shall judge. Pray, taste one.
Indeed, madam, I do not love the fruit.
Sir, you are loath to rob us of our dainties. 'Tis a delicate fruit. They say they are restorative.
'Tis a pretty art, this grafting.
'Tis so, a bettering of nature.
To make a pippin grow upon a crab, a damson on a blackthorn. How greedily she eats them. A whirlwind strike off these bawd farthingales. For but for that, and the loose-bodied gown, I should have discovered apparently the young springle cutting a caper in her belly.
I thank you, Bosola. They were right good ones, if they do not make me sick.
How now, madam?
This green fruit in my stomach are not friends. How they swell me.
Nay, you are too much swelled already.
I am in an extreme cold sweat.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Exit Bosola.
Lights to my chamber. Good Antonio, I fear I am undone. Lights, there are lights.
Exeunt Duchess and ladies.
Oh, my most trusty Delio, we are lost. I fear she's fallen in labor, and there's left no time for her remove.
Have you prepared those ladies to attend her, and procured the politic safe conveyance for the midwife your Duchess plotted?
I have.
Make use then of this forced occasion. Give out that Bosola hath poisoned her with these apricocks. Then that will give some color for her keeping close.
Why, the physicians will then flock to her.
For that you may pretend she'll use some prepared antidote of her own, lest the physicians should re-poison her.
I am lost in amazement. I know not what to think on it.
Exeunt. Wow. Well, a whole lot of plot started happening very quickly there.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
in that, yeah.
So first we have a part of the scene where Bosola holds forth against makeup in eloquent, vituperative fashion on some helpless woman who just happened to be passing by. Right? Then we have a little bit with him trying to get Antonio to say something. I think there was something weird about that dialogue, like he was trying to elicit something. And then the Duchess arrives, and my goodness, she's wearing very loose gowns. She's getting fat, and she's has an upset tummy. What could that portend? Apparently, if you want apricots and then they make you sick, it means she's pregnant. Not that we couldn't have guessed. Okay, thoughts about that scene?
Yeah,
Lynn.
it's such a leisurely start, and then all of a sudden they've been married long enough that she's like, they've been married like a year because she's ready to deliver. So yeah, the pacing is a little odd, but it works on stage. I mean, I've seen it; it works on stage.
I don't doubt it. It's just, here I was saying, oh, there's no plot. There's a little bit of plot. And then all the plot just landed in one scene. We got to have something else to say about this. Come on, there's some fabulous language here. Yeah, Alan.
I must admit, having just looked at the first lines of the next scene, I just wonder whether the old lady has got a reason for being in the Duchess's vicinity, which I think may come clear, which means that she's not quite as random an appearance as a simple target for someone having.
Imagine her quietly going about her business, and all of a sudden Bosola unloads his Jeremiad again.
Because she's worth it.
Lois.
Well, I mean, you do have that line. Delio asks if Antonio has procured that politics safe conveyance for the midwife, so it's possible that that's what she is. Obviously we don't know that when she first walks on, and it's not. I don't think it is ever made explicit, but I think that must be what she's doing there. Although, who knows? The court is full of funny people, and Castruccio is the husband of Julia, whom we've only just barely met in the first scene. And he's clearly a comic character. I mean, an elderly husband of a young wife. And
his name.
And so, I mean, but both he and the old lady seem to be there for Bosola just to hold forth at them and come out with one satiric speech after another. Apricots did have that connotation of, partly because of the name. I mean, if you call them apricots, you can see that. And I think there was another play we read, I can't remember which one, where someone says in the beginning, Mistress Honeymoon was the one who got the apricots as a prize, ho, ho. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, I see Brian and also Eric.
I'll just say my favorite line this time was the grafting metaphor, with its implications of trying to make fruit from unnatural unions, mismatched.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment on how Bosola has this thing of like talking about the body, whereas Antonio seems to be very obsessed with well, not obsessed, but like his language themes are sort of about princes and rising in terms of social status and other stuff and that kind of thing. I mean, okay, he had the bit about the Duchess earlier, but Bosola has this thing about like the opinion of wisdom is a foul tatter that runs over a man's body. Then he has that like sort of that whole speech about like man's dead and it's amazed to see his deformity, all that stuff. I don't know, it's just interesting how you've got that contrast, sort of the high and the lower stuff in a way.
What's really interesting, I think, is the way that you get both used about the Duchess. I mean, she's been so idealized in the earlier scenes, and then here, she pukes, her stomach seethes. I mean, it's really unusual to take the heroine of a play and actually reduce her in that way to this purely physical, practically vomiting on the stage. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary kind of characterization.
It really is, and it's quite an extraordinarily kind of detailed and physicalized version of pregnancy. We don't usually run into that. We hear about them carrying child or great with child or something, but we don't get a lot of this kind of, yeah. Capering. What does he say? Bosola has this wonderful description.
Yeah, if she hadn't been wearing this loose gown, he could have seen the young Springle cutting a caper in her belly. Yes.
Very vivid and very material image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we move on? We're in danger of actually, I don't know about actually finishing the scene that we said we would do, but getting close to it. Act 2, Scene 2, enter Bosola and the old lady.
So, there's no question but her tetchiness and most vulturous eating of the apricocks are apparent signs of breeding. Now?
I'm in haste, sir.
There was a young waiting woman, had a monstrous desire to see the glass house.
No, pray let me go. We'll hear no more of the glass house. We're still abusing women.
Who, I? No, only by the way now and then mention your frailties. The orange tree bears ripe and green fruit and blossoms all together, and some of you give entertainment for pure love, but more for more precious reward. The lusty spring smells well, but drooping autumn tastes well. If we have the same golden showers that rained in the time of Jupiter the Thunderer, you have the same Danaes still to hold up their laps to receive them. Didst thou never study the mathematics?
What's that, sir?
Why, to know the trick how to make many lines meet in one center. Go, give your foster daughters good counsel. Tell them that the devil takes delight to hang at a woman's girdle like a false rusty watch, that she cannot discern how the time passes.
Exit old lady. Enter Antonio, Roderigo, and Grisolan.
Shut up the court gates.
Why, sir, what's the danger?
Shut up the posterns presently and call all the officers of the court.
I shall instantly. Exit Grisolan.
Who keeps the key of the park gate?
For Obrosco.
Let him bring it presently.
Enter Grisolan with servants.
Oh, gentlemen of the court, the foulest treason.
If that these apricocks should be poisoned now without my knowledge.
There was taken even now a Switzer in the Duchess' bedchamber.
A Switzer?
With a pistol.
There was a cunning traitor.
And all the bolts of his buttons were leaden bullets.
Oh, wicked cannibal!
'Twas a French plot upon my life.
To see what the devil can do.
Are all the officers here?
We are.
Gentlemen, we have lost much plate, and this evening jewels, the value of 4,000 ducats, are missing in the Duchess' cabinet. Are the gates shut?
Yes.
'Tis the Duchess' pleasure each officer be locked into his chamber till the sun rising, and to send the keys of all their chests and of their outward doors into her bedchamber. She is very sick.
At her pleasure.
She entreats you take it not ill, the innocent shall be the more approved by it.
Gentlemen of the wood yard, where's your Switzer now?
By this hand. 'Twas credibly reported by one of the blackguard.
Exeunt all except Antonio and Delio.
How fares it with the Duchess?
She's exposed unto the worst of torture, pain, and fear.
Speak to her all happy comfort.
How I do play the fool with mine own danger. You are this night, dear friend, to post to Rome. My life lies in your service.
Do not now doubt me.
Oh, 'tis far from me, and yet fear presents me somewhat that looks like danger.
Believe it, 'tis but a shadow of your fear, no more. How superstitiously we mind our evils, the throwing down salt, or crossing of a hare, or bleeding at nose, or stumbling of a horse, or the singing of a cricket, or of power to daunt a whole man in us. Sir, fare you well. I wish you all the joys of a blessed father, and for my faith, lay this unto your heart. Old friends, like old swords, still our trusted best.
Exit Delio, enter Cariola. Sir, you are the happy father of a son. Your wife commends him to you.
Blessed comfort. For heaven's sake, tend her well. I'll presently go set a figure for his nativity.
Exeunt. Okay, so we have a baby. Antonio is sending Delio off to Rome to do something that might save him. There's this weird little comic dialogue about a Swiss person with a pistol in the Duchess' bedchamber and the servants, which is very funny.
It
and
was
takes
Colonel
up the
Mustard in the drawing room with a candlestick.
A weird little dialogue at the beginning with the old lady and Bosola that I didn't quite get what he was on about, but I mean, he's trying to get confirmation of the pregnancy, which, I mean, confirmation we have, right? I mean, when a woman appears like this and then 2 days later, there she is, flat-bellied at the very least. Right, so, thoughts, please. Lynn, you seem troubled.
Well, no, it is kind of weird the way this play is structured, that Bosola doesn't figure it out and rat her out like right now. He doesn't say, "Oh, I'm going to go tell the Cardinal," or "I'm going to go tell the Duke."
I guess he feels he needs to have proof as opposed to just suppositions.
It's like, oh wait, what if those apricots were poisoned? What if really is? Because,
Yes, I always find that really funny that this court is so corrupt that you think, oh my gosh, on top of everything else, that somebody else might have poisoned the apricot.
Alan, was that a hand wave?
No, it's
Okay.
nervous twitch.
Eric, was that a hand wave?
Well, no, but I mean, this scene is just so much like, I don't know. Antonio doesn't really do the sort of pacing up and down of like a nervous father like you'd see in a modern play. I mean, modern, like postmodern, nowadays, contemporary to us.
Like in about the 1950s?
Yeah,
that's where that image comes from me.
Yeah. But he just has this, he's doing plot in terms of like setting up like the whole device of keeping people in their rooms and all that stuff, which is quite interesting.
It's quite clever. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that he stays who he appears to be so far, because his only concern really has been for her. Alan, that is a raised hand, yes?
It is a raised hand, yeah. There was a question in the chat about the final line, "Go set a figure for his nativity," which is basically go and get a horoscope written. Because at the time, people did probably believe them slightly more than they do these days.
That's pretty funny then, right after Delio's comments about superstition. Trying to get him to step away from it. First thing he does is cast a horoscope.
Yeah, but everybody did.
It wasn't regarded as superstition at the time.
Well,
Yeah, it was, I guess, like going, I don't know, getting their blood type.
Yeah. And in fact, I think doing the horoscope for a king, if you weren't authorized to do it, was actually high treason, because you were trying to find out when they were going to die.
All right.
Yeah.
Eric.
I just want to go back to the servants and their sort of how they somehow ended up with this rumor that a Switzer in the Duchess' bedchamber with a pistol.
yes.
And the molds of his buttons were leaden bullets. So like this is basically James Bond stuff. Like that it's that level of sort of assassination type thing. But his plot was foiled and all that stuff. It's just
That's right. Lois?
Well, it's like so many things in this play. It's kind of a funny bit that has nothing to do with anything else. And I mean, it's the sort of thing for which people would use a word like comic relief, but it's one of the puzzling things about the play, and people that want to treat this as a deep, dark tragedy tend to cut all this stuff because they assume that it's not relevant. But I don't know quite what Webster was up to with it. But I mean, this goofy rumor that quickly goes around and is as quickly dispelled is just part of the thing.
Well, that's all I was going to say. I was going to just say that this was a total surprise. I come into this scene trying to figure out, I'm interested as we enter it in what Bosola was up to with those apricots. How much did he know? Did he poison them? I don't know. And so quickly he says, oh, maybe someone else poisoned them, which both tells me he didn't, and introduces another plot thing maybe I'm supposed to worry about. And then suddenly out of nowhere, there's this Swiss assassin. I was completely confused.
I really enjoyed that. That was the bit of, I sort of wondered, I don't know how appropriate this is, but it made me think in kind of a modern staging of social media and the way one thing misheard, it travels around the world, having acquired detail and drifted further and further from whatever the original spark was in the process. And I found it quite delightful.
Well, it does feel like maybe my current guess is it's showing us this stew of rumor and upset and excitement over an unexpected, dangerous event at the royal level.
Yeah.
Or noble level.
Yeah, and also kind of how febrile the atmosphere
Yes.
is here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. Any further thoughts, or shall we see if we can squeeze in one last scene, which still brings us a scene short of our goal today?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Act 2, Scene 3. Enter Bosola with a dark lantern.
Sure, I did hear a woman shriek. List. And the sound came, if I received it right, from the Duchess' lodgings. There's some stratagem in the confining all our courtiers into their several wards. I must have part in it. My intelligence will freeze else. List again. It may be 'twas the melancholy bird, best friend of silence and of solitariness, the owl, that screamed so. Antonio.
Enter Antonio with a candle, his sword drawn.
I heard some noise. Who's there? What art thou? Speak.
Antonio, put not your face nor body to such a forced expression of fear. I'm Bosola, your friend.
Bosola. This mole does undermine me. Heard you not a noise even now?
From whence?
From the Duchess' lodging.
Not I. Did you?
I did, or else I dreamed.
Let's walk towards it.
No, it maybe 'twas but the rising of the wind.
Very likely. Methinks 'tis very cold, and yet you sweat, you look wildly.
I have been setting a figure for the Duchess' jewels.
And how falls your question? Do you find it radical?
What's that to you? 'Tis rather to be questioned what design, when all men were commended to their lodgings, makes you a night walker.
In sooth, I'll tell you. Now all the court's asleep. I thought the devil had least to do here. I came to say my prayers, and if it do offend you, I do so. You're a fine courtier.
This fellow will undo me. You gave the Duchess apricots today. Pray heaven they were not poisoned.
Poisoned? A Spanish fig for the imputation.
Traitors are ever confident till they are discovered. There were jewels stolen too. In my conceit, none are to be suspected more than yourself.
You are a false steward.
Saucy slave, I'll pull you up by the roots.
Maybe the ruin will crush you to pieces.
You're an impudent snake indeed, sir. Are you scarce warm, and do you show your sting? You libel well, sir.
No, sir. Copy it out, and I will set my hand to it.
My nose bleeds. One that were superstitious would count this ominous when it comes by chance. 2 letters that are wrought here from my name are drowned in blood, mere accident. For you, sir, I'll take order in the morn, you shall be safe. 'Tis that must color her lying in. Sir, this door you must pass out not. I do not hold it fit that you come near the Duchess' lodgings till you have quit yourself. The great are like base. Nay, they are the same when they seek shameful ways to avoid shame.
Exit Antonio.
Antonio hereabout did drop a paper. Some of your help, false friend. Here it is. What's here? Child's nativity calculated. The Duchess was delivered of a son between the hours 12 and 1 in the night, Anno Domini 1504, that's this year. Decimo nono Decembris, that's this night, taken according to the meridian of Malfi. That's our Duchess. Happy discovery. The lord of the first house being combust in the ascendant signifies short life, and Mars being in a human sign joined to the tail of the dragon in the 8th house doth threaten a violent death. Caetera non scrutantur. Now it is most apparent, this precise fellow is the Duchess's bawd. I have it to my wish. This is the parcel of intelligency our courtiers were cased up for. It needs must follow that I must be committed on pretense of poisoning her, which I'll endure and laugh at. If one could find the father now, but that time will discover. Old Castruccio in the morning posts to Rome. By him I'll send a letter that shall make her brother's galls overflow their livers. This was a thrifty way. Though lust do mask in ne'er so strange disguise, she's oft found witty, but is never wise.
Exit Bosola. So what a fantastic scene. The two of them in the dark with their torches and the paper that drops, and wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
high drama. And what an idiotic thing to let drop, Antonio, you
Yeah.
dweeb.
And you know how, I mean, I think if you use your imagination, you'll immediately see how it happens, because he pulls the handkerchief out to because his nose is bleeding, and it's a monogrammed handkerchief, which is why the 2 letters on it are drowned in blood, his initials.
Right. Oh no, no bad omens here, he says, dropping
Yeah.
the clue that'll get
Yeah.
everybody killed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This can't possibly go wrong.
Yeah. Sometimes people drop things that they shouldn't drop. We can't talk about that here.
Yeah. Sometimes people do. But
Yeah.
yeah, but the thing that's it's a very interesting thing to me, along with all of the mentions of superstition that we've had and making fun of superstition. There's, oh no, a superstitious person would think it was bad luck that the letters of my name were covered in blood right now. Yeah, they would.
Yeah. In this kind of play, that's always bad luck.
It's like he doesn't know he's in a play.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Yeah, it's like people who are in horror movies. Don't go into that house. Why are you going to that?
Don't split up.
Yeah. The only people in horror movies are people who have never seen a horror movie. I don't know. I just love this play. We've known since from the jump, this can't end well. Her brothers seem. Antonio, who we tend to trust, says he's a little around the house about it, but he's like, yeah, they're kind of violent types. And they seem very adamant about her not marrying again. They don't, that one little hint about but honor. But except for that, it's just like, no, that's wrong. That you only do that for lust. And it's like, yeah. There's already a hint that they're a little concerned with their sister's sexuality in a way that's not helpful.
But what did he think was going to happen is what I keep thinking. I mean, she must have known she was pregnant for a long time. It's fairly obvious.
And after the wooing scene, Cariola, her trusted lady in waiting, is left in the room alone, and her last line in that scene is, "I owe her much of pity. I feel sorry for her." Basically, this play has been telling us from the beginning, this can't end well.
Yeah. But again, what did she think was going to happen? Why couldn't she, I don't know, do something? Tell them she's married him. Yeah, sorry, Lois.
Well, I mean, it's not really the kind of play where people prevent awful things from happening. And anyway, this is what happened. But also, I mean, there is a suggestion, I think, that they had planned what they were going to do when time came for childbirth, and possibly the apricots brought it on more quickly than it should have happened.
Right. We do know there is some sort of plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's a silly thing for me to say. It's like the teenagers not going into the haunted house in the horror movie.
Yeah. And she was 19. She was really little more than a child herself. And her steward's motivations, I mean, I think we know less about that. But I mean, he's obviously in love with her. His very first speech is about what an amazing person. With like, when she stops talking, you feel sad because her discourse is so charming. I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's not really true of anyone, really. I mean, he's obviously really smitten with her. And then when she says, "Here's my ring," hint, hint. He just has no power to say no. She's so beautiful and so desirable, and yeah, it's just like their emotional needs and their erotic needs just befog them, and they run headlong into their own doom, we presume, because I mean, this just can't end well. Her brothers are not good people. Yeah, and when like her Ferdinand says, "You are my sister. This is my father's poignard. This is my father's dagger." What is that a threat? Like, if you don't do what I ask you to do, I'll stab you. Is that the subtext there? It kind of seems to be. Yeah. So
that's certainly part of it. I also took it as that which is my father's must be kept pristine. Do you see? Yeah. Lois.
Yeah, I think Antonio in the scene where she proposes to him is really both overwhelmed, I mean, with joy that she should love him, but also terror. I mean, as his line, "Ambition, madam, is a great man's madness." I mean, and there are references to ambition. He's rising in the world. He's rising too fast. People are going to be hostile to someone who was only a steward. I mean, there's an obvious play that I won't mention where the possibility of a steward marrying a great lady is actually treated as comic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, and then Lynn.
I was just going to mention like Bosola's starting speech at the beginning of Act 2, Scene 3, where he sort of he doesn't know what this sound is. He's pretty sure it's the Duchess, but he's like, it might be an owl, and what the hell? It's dark. I don't know what's going on here. And it's kind of, I don't know, it just feels like that's probably the most honest response to hearing some noise in dark, actually. Like if you're walking around, like sort of, like Antonio went, yeah, it might be the wind. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting speech.
I think I had seen Lynn before, but I see Lois's hand raised now. Lynn, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, well, this is based on a true story, so she did actually. We don't know if legally or just spiritually, she was in a monogamous relationship with her estate manager, and they had children, and didn't end well. But it's not, our modern understanding, particularly our American understanding of how rank works, is probably not as nuanced as it was in the period. An estate manager for a duchess was probably the younger son of someone maybe just below her in social rank, or maybe even that younger son or a nephew of a duke. I mean, he's not a peasant. So you would have the audience's sympathy to a certain extent, because I mean, he is nobly born. He's just too young, or his family's not wealthy enough, or whatever, for him to have an estate and a household of his own. But he's not hoi polloi. He's obviously a good person. He's obviously a noble person.
She hasn't taken up with the bootblack boy. Yes.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Lois?
Well, yeah. What Eric was saying about the owl and the screeching and so on. I mean, you can see why this was the first play they did at the Wanamaker, which is a theater that works by candlelight. I mean, there are a lot of nocturnal scenes that depend on people not being able to see each other, and and the scenes involving a dark lantern, which I think was a lantern where you could shut it off, completely conceal the light in it if you were, so if you want, it would be like turning off your torch really, or flashlight. And that's what Bosola has, which is why, of course, it takes him a while to find the dropped paper and that kind of thing. But it's a quite a creepy scene. I mean, that bit at the beginning talks about hearing a shriek, and then that thing where he suggests to Antonio they should walk towards it, which is the last thing Antonio wants, obviously, since he doesn't want him to get into the Duchess's bedroom and find out what's going on in there. So the whole thing, it's difficult when we're reading it to picture the effect on a darkened stage. If it was, I mean, I've actually written about this, because if the play was done at the Globe, then all this darkness was imaginary. I mean, you could see everything that was going on, and you just knew from characters coming on with lanterns and torches and things like that you were supposed to imagine the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see at the Wanamaker. I happen to have seen a dark lantern, so I know what it is. It's sort of, at least the later ones that I've seen, I don't know about this period, is square-sided, and each of the four sides has a metal shutter on it, and you can lift one so that it shines out or close it.
One side or close.
Yeah. I've seen some hands. I think I saw Eric Allen.
I was just going to say that this scene, like the beginning of that scene, reminds me of basically something else we've read, which is Antigone by Thomas May, which wasn't the best translation, but it was the most atmospheric. There's an entire scene where Antigone and her, I can't remember if it's her sister or in that version as well, go looking for sort of her brother's body in the dark on a battlefield, and they're about to be found.
Full of corpses. Yum.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's just, if you get the same level of atmosphere sort of up there, it's like you can imagine how terrified everyone would be, I imagine. Like that's why Antonio enters with his sword drawn, even if it is Bosola and sort of, yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time. I don't think we're going to manage to read Act 2, Scene 4. I think we should be looking at final thoughts on the play so far. Yeah. Anyone want to volunteer, or shall I, pick names from my window screen?
I'll go.
Okay, go.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what Lois said. This is more carefully written, or more, what did you say? There's something about more composed.
Yeah, well, there's something to that effect, yeah.
Yeah, than a lot of the text we read. And I think that's absolutely true. I think that's an important observation, that it's so atmospheric, and some of the metaphors that, work, and the rise, rise, get up off your knees, but also rise, by marrying me, and the sort of joke about grafting, and the dramatic irony of that means more than Bosola that it means. So I mean, all of that seems very careful, and really thoughtful, and so much time spent on sort of atmosphere and world building with Bosola's satiric observations about court life and so on. It's just a really rich text. I just feel like it's just got a lot going on. It's a really great reading text. It works on stage, and of course it's got a really interesting female title character, which a minority of plays from this period do. So yeah, it's really super interesting.
Cool. Anyone else want to volunteer, or? Okay, I'm going to start picking. Eric, you're next.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I very intelligently closed the script on the line I wanted to mention, but yeah, this is an interesting play. I mean, having seen it, although I've kind of forgotten the details of it, so I'm sort of new to it, but not quite. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's like, I remember watching it and thinking, so how intelligent are these people? They clearly are intelligent, though, because and you start off with these sort of characters that have no asides at all, and suddenly they go into asides as well, because like Antonio had no asides until like this last scene, basically, I think, possibly, and which tells you a lot about how this play is structured. It's like it gets more and more intimate as you go along, I think. Like we had all the sort of world building in the first scene with the Cardinal and the sort of scene setting of the court, and sort of Antonio returning from the French court and dressed like a Frenchman and all that stuff. And now we're kind of moving towards a more domestic, like sort of setting, which is interesting if you think about it, and also kind of it makes you think of sort of films where characters have been locked in a house for so long that they don't remember there's an outside world, which is kind of interesting. I don't know, just a thought. And obviously it is stageable, so yeah.
Yeah, not just greater intimacy, but also greater complexity, like you said, about the utterances, the asides, and the allouds, and this kind of, we've gone from like the full splendor of a court party, basically, to, I mean, it's not the end of the play or the end of anything, it's just the end of our session, but to two men groping in the dark. And that's interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
Alan, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I must admit, I'm happier with the thing now because we have got down to this much more contained cast list. I was getting very confused earlier with the sheer number of bodies around during the opening sequence, which, yes, I can see is establishing the court environment, but it does make it quite tricky to follow. Now it's become much more compact in terms of the number of bodies involved. The story gets a chance to carry itself along. And it's certainly moving at a reasonable lick, isn't it? I mean, we're only just over a quarter of the way through the text. You know, one wonders what on earth is going to happen to fill the rest of the time.
Plenty.
And we went from proposal of marriage to delivery of child in 2 quite short scenes too. Yeah. Brian, any final thoughts?
Yeah, a little. When I first encountered Jacobean tragedies in graduate school, I had not much use for them. It wasn't that I didn't think they were well done, it's just that I wasn't interested. They were too outre, too focused on things that I just didn't care about as much. They didn't seem appealing. And this read through with this group is showing me useful things I had not fully appreciated before. So what it feels to me like now in what we've gone through is I have a better appreciation for this as kind of a roller coaster ride, where you go up on the first scene and you're tick, 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 ticking as they lay out the track ahead of you. You know, we're in this kind of court scene, this kind of morality. These are the things to be alert about. And even though you know what kind of a sensational ride it's going to be, in these 2 scenes with the one with the rumor of the Swiss guards, and following that with the owl and the dark lantern scene with just 2 people sounding each other out in a highly dramatic moment, I feel like for the first time I feel that lurch in my stomach, and I don't, you know, like I do know, but I in a sense I feel like I can see how the drama is letting us feel like we've lost control. We don't know where we are. We could lurch in any direction. There's something terrible happening, and I'm grateful to you all for that.
Oh, you thought you were a nerd before. Oh, we're gonna like ratchet up the nerd.
Lois, do you have any final thoughts before we close the session?
Well, I mean, as you know, I really like this play. There are things people point out about it that we haven't been pointing out. I mean, for example, that in the first scene, although Antonio has just returned from France, he's the one who's telling Delio about the characters in the court. You'd think it would be the other way around. And then the way that the passing of time is handled, where, you know, 2 people come on and one of them says, "So long since married, you amaze me," and everybody's amazed. And
audience
And it's
included.
almost, I mean, there are several places where it's as if Webster was almost having a joke with theatrical conventions. You know, so much of these asides and these deliberately extravagant speeches, you know, and Bosola just says, observe my meditation now. I've decided to, you know, hold forth on the subject of human depravity and decay, you know, and you're stuck with it. So, I mean, some of
Yeah.
it's really odd. It's playing, I think, a great deal with different dramatic conventions, and very few of the productions that I've seen of it have satisfied me. And I think partly because directors really don't know what to make of this, and they often try to make it, I think, a more consistent play than it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really, really impressed by its craftsmanship myself, and just how lightly it wears it as well. It's not sort of, I mean, it's aware of, the writer seems aware of his own cleverness, but he's not really beating us over the head with it. He's going, look at this and look at this. Oh, and have some of that while you're at it. And it's really, I'm charmed. Anyway, so that's the end of our session. We got through Act 2, Scene 3, and that's as far as we got, which isn't too bad, given we had a great deal to say, and it's quite a wordy text as well. I'm going to call an end to the festivities and see you again. I hope all of you, and maybe some more people, for the next session. So nothing remains but to thank the readers for their wonderful reading. That's what one says.
Bye.